For almost 5 minutes, a truck sat outside our tent with its headlights aimed directly at us. The driver never called out, never got out, never turned the engine off. He just watched. Months later, when I saw that same truck on the evening news, I realized how close we had come to becoming another missing persons case. I've been camping most of my life. Living in Australia, it's hard not to appreciate how much wilderness is still untouched. My wife and I made it a tradition to disappear into the Victorian high country at least once every month. No phone calls, no traffic, just dirt tracks, rivers, and enough silence to remind you how small you really are. After years of camping, very little unsettled me. I'd spent time in the military before civilian life, and sleeping in remote places never bothered me. Until that trip. A few days before leaving, we'd seen a news report about a couple who had vanished somewhere in the Wollongata Valley. Nobody seemed to know exactly what had happened. Search crews found almost nothing, and the media had already started doing what they always do, turning every local hermit into a potential serial killer. One man kept appearing in every article. People called him the Button Man. According to locals, he lived deep in the mountains alone and carved buttons from deer bones he'd collected after hunting. Whether any of it was true didn't really matter. News outlets loved strange stories. We laughed about it while packing the car. Imagine running into him, my wife joked. I'd rather run into him than another tourist, I said. At the time, it didn't seem funny. The drive into the valley took most of the day. The deeper we went, the rougher the tracks became. Eventually, the road narrowed enough that thick eucalyptus trees blocked out most of the afternoon sun. Dust hung in the air behind us for so long it felt like the road was swallowing itself. We crossed a shallow river before finding an empty campsite beside the water. It looked perfect. Flat ground, a fire ring, enough space to park. The only strange thing was how empty the place felt. Usually, even remote campsites have signs someone had been there recently. Fresh tire marks, an old beer can, boot prints. This place looked untouched, almost abandoned. While unloading the cruiser, I noticed something beside the fire pit. A rusted tent peg, bent almost flat. I picked it up, turning it over in my hand. "No one's coming back for that," I muttered before tossing it aside. The afternoon passed quietly. There was one moment that still bothers me more than anything that happened later. I walked down to the river to wash my hands before dinner. It couldn't have been more than 50 meters from camp. When I turned around, I couldn't immediately see our campsite through the trees. For maybe 3 or 4 seconds, I had no idea which direction I'd come from. That doesn't sound frightening, but if you've spent enough time in the bush, you'll know how quickly everything starts looking the same. Then I heard my wife call my name. I laughed it off as I walked back. But from that point on, I had the strange feeling the valley was much bigger than it looked. We swam in the freezing river, cooked dinner over the fire, watched the sun disappear behind the mountains. As the light faded, the temperature dropped almost instantly. The river that had sounded peaceful all afternoon now echoed through the valley in a way that made it difficult to judge distance. Every sound seemed farther away than it should have been. Then, almost without noticing when it happened, the bush went completely silent. No insects, no birds, nothing. I've spent enough nights outdoors to know silence usually means something else has everyone's attention. It should have been one of those peaceful nights you remember for years. Instead, I couldn't shake the feeling that somebody else was there. Not something supernatural, nothing like that. Just the uncomfortable sensation you get when someone is watching without letting you know they're there. Every few minutes, I'd find myself scanning the tree line. Nothing, just darkness between the trunks. "You all right?" my wife asked. "Yeah. You've looked over your shoulder about 20 times. I know. You think it's because of those missing people?" I forced a laugh. "Probably." But even as I said it, I wasn't convinced. By 10:30, the fire had burnt down to glowing embers. The bush around us became eerily quiet. No wind, no insects. Even the river sounded strangely distant. I've spent enough nights outdoors to know animals don't simply stop making noise without a reason. Something had changed. I couldn't explain what. Before climbing into my swag, I reached into the cruiser and grabbed my bush knife. My wife raised an eyebrow. "Are you seriously bringing that to bed?" Humor me!" She rolled her eyes but didn't argue. I don't know how long I'd been asleep when a bright white light burned through the canvas. I checked my watch. 11:38 p.m. An engine idled somewhere nearby. At first, I assumed another camper had arrived late. It happens. People drive around looking for a free campsite. They realize someone's already there. Then they move on. Except this one didn't. The headlights stayed fixed on us. Then something changed. The headlights dipped for just a second, like someone inside had shifted their weight. They returned to full brightness. I remember staring at the canvas of the swag, trying to figure out whether I was imagining it. Then they dipped again. Whoever was inside was moving. They just weren't getting out. I waited. 1 minute, 2, 3. The engine never shut off. The lights never moved. My wife whispered, "Why aren't they leaving?" I don't know. You think they're lost. If they were lost, they'd ask. Neither of us spoke after that. The only sounds were the diesel engine and music drifting through the trees. Classic rock, not loud enough to enjoy, just loud enough to remind us someone was sitting out there, doing absolutely nothing. 5 minutes passed, then 7, then 10. No doors opened. Nobody called out. Nobody even switched the lights to low beam. Every instinct I'd developed in the army was screaming the same thing. This wasn't normal. I quietly unzipped the side of the swag opposite the headlights. "Stay here," I whispered. "What are you doing?" "Checking." She grabbed my arm. "Don't. If they're just campers, I'll know. If they're not." I didn't answer. My mouth had gone completely dry. I realized I'd been holding my breath without noticing. Even my heartbeat sounded loud enough that I was worried whoever was outside might somehow hear it. Military training teaches you to stay calm. It doesn't stop fear. It just teaches you how to function while you're afraid. Keeping low, I crawled behind the cruiser before slipping into the bushes. Dry branches cracked beneath my knees despite how carefully I moved. The knife felt heavier than it ever had. I circled wide until I was looking toward the road from behind a line of trees. Halfway around the cruiser, my knee landed on a loose rock. It rolled, barely a sound. But in that silence, it might as well have been a gunshot. I froze. The music inside the patrol stopped. My stomach dropped. 5 seconds, 10, 15. Then the music came back. I started moving again. The truck finally came into view. A dark Nissan Patrol, covered in dust. One rear brake light was cracked. Its engine idled steadily. The driver's window was down. Music spilt into the night. But the driver never moved. He wasn't looking around. He wasn't checking a map. He wasn't searching for somewhere to camp. He was staring directly toward our tent, completely still. I crouched there for what felt like forever, waiting, watching, trying to convince myself there had to be an explanation. Then something happened. The music stopped. Instantly, silence swallowed the valley. The driver leaned forward, just slightly. Then, the driver's door clicked. My grip tightened around the knife. The door opened a few inches. One boot appeared on the dirt. Every muscle in my body locked. I remember thinking, if he starts walking toward the tent, I'm going to have to make a decision I'll regret for the rest of my life. The boot stayed there for several seconds. Then slowly, it disappeared back inside. The door shut. The engine was revived. Without turning around or saying a word, the patrol drove away into the darkness. I stayed hidden another 10 minutes, just listening. When I finally returned, neither of us slept for the rest of the night. We waited another 20 minutes before speaking. "They're gone," my wife whispered. I looked toward the road. "I think so." That's when another engine echoed through the valley. We both froze. It grew louder, then passed somewhere high above us on another track. We laughed, not because it was funny, because our nerves were completely shot. Every distant engine made us sit upright. Every snapping branch made us reach for the torch. Morning couldn't come fast enough. At first light, we packed everything without even making coffee. Neither of us wanted to spend another minute there. Walking toward the road, I noticed the patrol had left deep tire marks in the soft dirt. What caught my attention wasn't that it had stopped. It was nowhere. There was enough room to pull into the empty campsite 20 meters away. Instead, whoever had been driving had deliberately stopped directly in front of our swag. Back home, life slowly returned to normal. Eventually, I convinced myself we'd simply met an incredibly strange person. Maybe he'd been drunk. Maybe he'd been lost. Maybe he was just socially awkward. It became one of those stories we'd tell friends around barbecues. I was watching the evening news when a familiar vehicle appeared on the screen. I almost changed the channel. It was just another news report about the missing couple. Then they showed footage from the investigation. A dark Nissan Patrol. My stomach tightened immediately. It wasn't just the model, it had the same cracked brake light I'd noticed while hiding in the bushes. A dark Nissan Patrol. Dust-covered, one damaged rear brake light. Everything was similar. Police had arrested a man in connection with the murders of the missing couple from Wanangata Valley. Then the reporter said something that made my stomach drop. Investigators believed the victims had disappeared from a campsite beside the river, the exact campsite where we'd spent that night. I sat frozen on the couch while the footage played. The truck, the location, the timeline, everything matched. To this day, I don't know why that driver stopped outside our tent. Maybe he was just watching. Maybe he was deciding whether we were worth the risk. Or maybe the only reason we're still alive is because somewhere in those 10 long minutes, he changed his mind. Ever since then, I've never been able to look at a pair of headlights in the middle of the wilderness without wondering who's behind them and what might have happened if they'd decided to step out. The police never released why he stopped outside our camp that night. Maybe he was resting, maybe he was lost, or maybe he was deciding whether 2 more people would disappear without a trace. I still go camping, just not there, and whenever headlights stop outside my tent after dark, I don't wait to find out why. Tell me about your camping experience in the comments. Subscribe to The Dark Chronicles. See you in the dark.